2, 1. Welcome to another episode of the Less is More Sports podcast. We took a bit of a bye week last week, but we're back in full force for just another week in the exciting world of sports. I got the haircut. The hair's all gone, so you know I'm ready to go. I'm joined here with my co-host, Matt Spencer, who looks just ready to go right now. He took a swig of something to drink, and he's ready to get after it. Matt, how you doing, buddy?
We're doing good, buddy. We're doing good. I was in North Carolina last weekend and got some family time in and ready to get back at it, and kind of took a break from everything that's been going on this year. 2020 has not been anybody's year.
No, it has not. It's been absolutely terrible. And I don't know what's been worse, 2020 or the fact I got to look at you this entire podcast. Jeez.
Oh, man.
At least the other podcasts I get to, look at Clucas or, DJ, but no, it's just you. Damn it. You know what? No shade to Clucas. He's doing the good Samaritan thing. He's helping his friend out. So no shade at him at all. And we can't wait to have you back. But it's me and Spencer's time to shine this weekend, so let's get to it. And we got a slate of topics to talk about today. And some of the biggest news that broke this week is that Oklahoma State has been sanctioned by the NCAA and is put on a postseason ban for the 2020-2021 season. So, Spencer, given that this is your area of expertise, kind of fill in our audience on why Oklahoma State is in this position.
Basically, one of their coaches was wiretapped by the FBI during the Christian Dawkins Adidas scandal, and they got caught in a pay-for-play scheme. And basically what the NCAA decided is that they leveled a level 1 unethical conduct charge against former Cowboys associate head coach Lamont Evans. The penalty is going to be they lose 3 scholarships over the next 3 seasons, and they have a postseason ban. This is really one of the first punishments that the NCAA has levied regarding the FBI wiretap scandal that came out in 2017 with Christian Dawkins at Adidas. A lot of schools are nervous around the country. I'll tell you that.
Speaking of a lot of schools being nervous, being that we are based out of Louisville, Kentucky, the University of Louisville is a part of that scandal linked to Adidas. So my next question is, should the University of Louisville be worried?
Yes. Everything that I've been reading about Oklahoma State, and the NCAA likes to work on a case-for-case basis, but when it comes to Louisville actually had enrolled a recruit that they paid for. And so Oklahoma State never did that. And so that's what Oklahoma State's trying to do right now is they're trying to appeal to the NCAA to say, hey, even though this associate head coach was caught in a pay-for-play scandal, we never actually enrolled or took anybody. Louisville, on the other hand, did take and enroll somebody. And that was a big scandal here that ended Rick Pitino's career with Louisville. Sent him overseas to Greece for a couple of years. Now, I don't know whether or not Louisville will get any latitude from the NCAA because of their own punishment that they took upon themselves a couple of years ago. That might have something to do with it. But, again, the NCAA didn't show them any grace for the 2013 Katina Powell situation. So the NCAA is I don't know. They're on the move. And personally, I thought this was a quick and swift punishment given that the notice of allegations just came out for these schools about a couple months ago. So
right. As if losing a postseason appearance isn't bad enough, we also have to think about that Oklahoma State is bringing in their highest-ranked recruit in program history in Cade Cunningham. And with a situation like this, what is the future of Cade? You know, do you think he stays at Oklahoma State? I mean, I know I'll get into like the Twitter poll and my opinion later, but I want to hear your take. What do you think Cade should do?
Well, I mean, you're losing 3 scholarships over the next 3 seasons, and you're not going to be in the NCAA tournament next year if there is one. Personally, if you're coming to college, you're looking for exposure, and your exposure is going to happen in the NCAA tournament. Your draft stock's going to go up. I know the Big 12 is a decent conference for exposure. You got the likes of Kansas and Texas Tech, but I don't see a player of that caliber staying at Oklahoma State under the cloud that they're under. I can see the NCAA granting him, hey, you can go along your way, and you're not going to have to sit out a season. So,
we ran a Twitter poll earlier in the week, and 68% of the voters agree with you is that he should transfer. The reason I'm hesitant on that is because Oklahoma State in the summer of 2019 hired his brother as an assistant coach. So there's family ties there. Obviously, that accounts for something. But if I'm Cade, given the momentum with Jalen Green and other players, I would go G League route. Cade Cunningham in several 2021 mock drafts is expected to be the number 1 overall pick. So in a lot of ways, people feel that he's cut out for the pros. My personal opinion, which is irrelevant to what we're talking about right now, I don't think Cade is that great. I think he's a very good player. I think he's a top 10 player in the class. I don't think he's the number 1. I don't think he's a consensus number 1 pick. But a lot of scouts disagree with me. And given that he's already made this kind of name for himself, I think the G League route, go in, have that paid internship, get that $500,000 a year or whatever, or $250,000, whatever they decide to sign him to, and just sit out and just work and just continue to work on your skills and just go into the 2021 draft class. But that would, if I'm Cade, that's what I do. And you see more and more of these top recruits doing it. I don't see why Cade should be any different.
You make a great point. That would be a great route. You can get yourself ready against professional adults instead of guys who are not really on that talent level, the NBA talent level. I could see him doing that, but also who watches the G League? So nobody watches the G League. I mean, I don't watch the G League. I might be wrong. You can call me out, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think the viewership ratings are the same. The crowds are definitely not the same as a college experience. So, I mean, you can do a lot of spectacular things in college. I really, to be honest, until the NBA and the NCAA collaborates on what they want to do with their minor league system, the G League, it's not a good league. But I have my own opinions about that league.
To even further your point, these players like Jalen Green or Isaiah Todd, the ones that are choosing the G League route, given this new circumstance, they're actually not even allowed to play in regular season games. They're only allowed to play in postseason games. But to counteract that, they are still working out with, like you said, grown men, adults, and not collegiate athletes. So there's that. But like you said, the exposure isn't the same. The atmosphere is definitely not the same. I mean, in a lot of cases, that college atmosphere is a lot different than the NBA in a lot of ways, and some would say a lot better. So, I mean, there's that point as well.
Personally, I like the European and overseas direction better than the G League. I think it can offer your top athletes more than the G League can offer.
More as in
what? Than the G League. I mean, they can offer them more opportunity. They can offer them a different way to play basketball. And not only that, the money is there. It's really tax-free, whereas here in the United States, it's taxed. So right. I've seen a lot of successful guys come across from overseas, from Europe, from Asia, from South America, and they do well.
But there's also those share that don't. I mean, I remember,
Yeah.
I'm sure you remember Brandon Jennings, and he turned out to have a decent NBA career, but, based on where he was, the level he was thought to be when he was playing at Oak Hill versus what we got in the NBA was completely different. And another player that Louisville fans might even remember was Jeremy Tyler, who was originally committed to Louisville, but then chose to go overseas and play. And then we don't know what happened to him next. So why does it work for some players and not work for others? Or what's your opinion on that?
Well, I mean, you have to take every player individually. I mean, there is no history behind why certain players do well and other players don't. It's the same. It's the same when you look at quarterbacks who go from college, who are really successful in college, and then you get to the NFL. Sometimes it's just the right system. Sometimes it's just the right coach. Other times it's the right mentality. I always tell my players, I mean, you've always got to have an edge. You always got to have a chip on your shoulder. You always got to have a mentality that you're getting better every single day. If you don't have that mentality, if you think that you've arrived, that's the second people who are staying up while you're sleeping and working on their game, working on their craft, they're going to start to pass you up. And so, personally, I don't know what it is. There's really no clear-cut answer. But when it comes to stuff like that, I usually just chalk it up to guys lose their edge. Guys lose that mentality that got them to be as talented and successful as they were at that point, to get them to a point that we were talking about. Players shouldn't be reading their own press clippings. Let's just put it that way.
I'll say.
You start to get a big head, and it's just there has to be a level of humility involved. If you, like I said, if you think that you've arrived, you haven't. If you watch the Last Dance documentary, if you watch anything about Kobe in the last couple of months about his life, Mamba mentality, you would recognize that Michael Jordan was always trying to figure out a way to play the perfect game in 1998. And he was already in his peak and already shown off his greatness. I mean, Bobby Knight was talking about how he thought he was the greatest basketball player he had ever seen in 1984. So that's why I think it's so interesting about Jordan, not to get off on a rabbit trail, is that he always figured out a way to have a chip on his shoulder. He always figured out a way to have somebody motivate him. I think Tom Brady is that same way. Kobe Bryant's that same way. All your greats are that way. LeBron James, the Larry Birds, the Magic Johnsons, you name it.
No, I definitely agree with that. But I want to backtrack to a statement you were saying earlier about how every individual is different. There's not a clear-cut way that leads to success in any level. So given where we live, I think is it fair for me to ask, is there anything behind the whole the University of Kentucky prepares you better than certain schools for the NBA, or, the likes of, or any truth behind that Duke players don't perform in the NBA? So what do you make of that conversation, given what we just talked about?
Well, I mean, historically, Kentucky really didn't produce NBA-level talent until recently. Nothing that you would sit there and, call home about. I mean, you had the 90s run with Jamal Mashburn and Antoine Walker, but Calipari, what Calipari has done, I mean, how many players has he put into the league in the last 10 years?
That's a lot. He's put 40? The most of any other D1 college, so 30
or 40. And how many are we talking about?
Like I said,
4 or 5?
more than, I don't know the exact number, but it's more than any D1 college.
So, I mean, I think it's no mystery with Duke that they stay there for 4 years. They learned under a great coach, and they learned how to play team basketball, and they bought into a system. And in college, you can do that. Right. I mean, you can go back and look at the last 4 national champions, and you could sit there and say, these guys stayed in college, they played together as a team, they had experience. And if anybody, most of the people who don't know me who watch this podcast, my biggest thing that I've always said to Les and Jacob over the years is I will always take team and experience over talent in college.
Sure.
It's not going to hold true in the NBA. The guys that are on Kentucky and Duke's team will probably be better than the guys who play for Villanova the last 2 out of 3 years and the North Carolina team in 2017. I mean, you can look at the leadership that Duke had in 2015 and I mean, the Quinn Cook. Where's Quinn Cook?
Right.
I mean, Quinn Cook, he's a great player, but I mean, is he really on that same level that we talk about with an Anthony Davis, a Boogie Cousins, you know, your guy down there in Miami? I mean, so.
Is it a fair question to ask that Calipari also puts a lot of players in the pros because of the caliber of players that he goes after?
Well, if you watch Calipari's 30 for 30, I mean, I get why he does what he does. Let's just put it that way. And I respect it. You don't want to hold a player back.
Right.
Because if you're holding a player back, you're doing it for your own personal reasons. You're doing it for ulterior motives. These guys are ready to go to the NBA. So once you have a vacant scholarship spot, you got to fill it again. And, you know, Calipari has become notorious for the ability to craft an offense that's easily learned, that's an offense that a lot of talented NBA players, talented basketball players in high school love to play. It gives them the ability to showcase their talents in other ways. I mean, you could go look at Roy Williams over in North Carolina. I mean, I'm not saying that Roy Williams holds players back, but if you don't come in willing to buy into a system, you're not going to be successful.
Right.
Now, Roy Williams, personally, I think Roy Williams' offense is a player-friendly offense, but it also has complexities that I don't think Calipari's does.
Right.
So when I look at Calipari as far as his recruiting and as far as what he does for his talented basketball players, he gets an A+ in my book.
Right.
But when you look over at what he is as a bench coach, I don't think he's the best bench coach. I don't think he's the best X's and O's coach. I definitely think he lacks in that area. But also, it's hard to have team chemistry when you only have guys for 1 or 2 years.
Exactly.
So you don't trust your teammate as well as you would with a team that's played together for 3 or 4 years. Teams that's played together for 6 months or a year, they're not going to trust and have that same camaraderie as a team that's played together for a long time. And like I said, you can go down the list the last 10 years, and you're going to see a consistent feature out of 9 out of 10 teams, 8 out of 10 teams. You could probably throw 20. Really, the 2 teams that stick out the most to me that didn't have the same experience as some of the others is the 2012 Kentucky and 2015 Duke team. I mean, on paper, who do you think wins? 2015 Wisconsin or 2015 Kentucky?
You know, on paper, well, we all believed Kentucky, but
exactly.
That's why they play the games.
Exactly. So Wisconsin was a very motivated group. They were a talented group, not as talented as Kentucky, but personally, I think they had they had more team camaraderie and experience, and that got Kentucky in the end. So,
And I mean, I'm glad that you brought that up because that was something that I had to learn. And this might sound biased, but being a Duke fan, I would watch, the Calipari teams at Memphis when he had guys like Derrick Rose or Tyreek Evans, and then he goes to Kentucky. He gets the John Wall class with Boogie Cousins and Eric Bledsoe also attached to it. And I'm thinking, back then, of course, I'm younger. I'm first starting out in college too, and I'm thinking, oh, you're recruiting all these top recruits. It's easy that you should be winning this many games with this level of talent. But at the same time, then Coach K and the Blue Devils started taking that route. And, they've been successful in their own right as well. But you realize that as talented these players are, you have less than 10 months to put it together and make a national title run. And then once you get into that tournament, one bad game and you're out. And exactly. And it really opened my eyes to how actually hard Calipari's job actually is to put it all together in that 1 year. Go back. It doesn't matter at the end of the day if you have guys like Zion Williamson, R.J. Barrett, or guys like Anthony Davis and John Wall. They're only there for 1 year, and you have that 1 year to put it together. And that's a tall task to put on a bunch of 18, 19-year-olds.
And you say 18, 19-year-olds, and personally, the fan on the couch doesn't – I think we give more credit to these guys than they really deserve. They're just 18 and 19-year-old kids, and that's what they are. They're 18 and 19-year-old kids. These guys were a year removed from playing in their own division against their own talent level, age, and now they've been thrust into college, and they're playing against guys who are their age, but most of them, the starters that they're playing against, they've been there 2 or 3 years. They're 21 and 22 years old.
And they've also had NCAA tournament experience, and they know what to expect once they get onto that stage.
Exactly. So, and another thing that we often forget is the psychological makeup of an 18, 19-year-old male. An 18, 19-year-old male doesn't think the same way as a 21, 22-year-old male. The frontal lobe has been scientifically proven to not fully develop until you're 25 for an adult male. And so when you're 25, your frontal lobe, which deals with your decision-making processes and the consequences behind your actions, that fully develops. And so you're able to better think through scenarios in life, given whatever it might be, basketball, and life outside basketball, stuff like that. Exactly. So these are 18, 19-year-old kids, and we're expecting them to think the same way that we are. That's just not going to be the case. We've got to be easy on these guys.
Right.
We've got to give them room to grow up and become an adult. When you grew up, just if you're listening to this, if you grow up and you're 25, you're 30 now, you look back and when you're 18, you look through life in a different way. So
oh, for sure.
Yep.
I'd be a liar if I sat here and said that I viewed life the same way when I was 18 as I do at 26. I'd be kidding everybody and probably would lose all of the viewers we do have because they'd be like, this guy's full of shit. But
right.
And it's easy for your average couch fan to look at that 2015 Kentucky team and see the names like Karl Anthony Towns or Devin Booker. But you have to realize, yes, Karl Anthony Towns and Devin Booker have turned into very good pro players. But you're not getting 24, 25-year-old Karl Anthony Towns or 24, 25-year-old Devin Booker that one season in Kentucky. Like you said, they are these fresh out of high school kids that, just a couple months prior were walking across a high school stage to receive their diploma, and now they're asked to lead a collegiate team where players range anywhere from 18 to 22 years old, players that have been there for years and know what to expect once they get onto the stage and just put it all together just like that. And it's a really tall task to ask. Not that it can't be done, because 2012 Kentucky, 2015 Duke were both teams loaded with freshmen that were able to win a national title. But it's a lot harder than just if you just look at the names and say, oh, Marvin Bagley, Zion Williamson or R.J. Barrett, they should be winning a title. It's not that simple.
Right. Exactly right. I couldn't have said it better myself. So, it's always impressive to see freshman teams, but my money is always going to ride on the team and experience. And so that's why I always thought that if Louisville could ever get it together this past season, with their injuries and their consistency issues, that they could have made a run. But now we'll never know.
Right. So, we won't. And I kept commenting on, social sites and social sports pages online. And I always believed that if Duke of the last several Duke teams, this team had the best chance to win the title, not because of what they did necessarily throughout the regular season, but they didn't really have that alpha freshman. I mean, I guess you could say Vernon Carey. I mean, but where I'm going with is that they had experience to back up their youth as well. So they had a good combination of youth talent and experience that's been there. And maybe
you saw when Vernon Carey stepped off the floor. I mean, they were still able to play at the same kind of consistency that they did when he was off the floor. Now, I don't know necessarily that they could have sustained that, but you could have definitely gotten by without him being on the floor. Whereas, in the past, before you gotten by with Zion.
Before you continue, though, I do want to say that Duke would have definitely needed Vernon Carey in March.
Yeah, like I said, I don't think they could have been able to sustain losing Vernon Carey, but they definitely could have done without him for a couple minutes here or there.
For sure. While we're talking about scandals, and as we just got done talking about Duke, let's jump into our next scandal, and let's touch a little bit about what's going on in the Zion situation. Like I said, prior to before we jumped on the podcast, I was pretty confused. Does Zion have to? Is Zion receiving improper benefits relevant? Is it not? What does he have to? And you shed light on that to me. So kind of shed light on our viewers. What is going on in that situation?
So basically, just to give you a small recap to guys who haven't been following the case, Zion backed out of his agreement with Gina Ford down in Miami, a sports agency down in Miami, and sued her because – let me back up. So Gina Ford and Zion entered into an agreement right before the NBA draft. That agreement was basically, I want to say it was $10 million. Was it $10 million?
It was 10, yeah.
Yeah, it was $10 million. And so $10 million of the royalties that Zion was going to receive throughout his career, which, I mean, he already entered into a $100 million contract with Jumpman and Jordan Brand. But Zion backed out of that agreement because basically Gina Ford was not a agent that was certified by the NBA Players Association. And so Zion's, sued her, she countersued him, and there was a guy out of Louisiana that sued Gina Ford because he was promised money for delivering Zion to her and to Duke. Mm-hmm. So it's a very complex issue. You can see that I'm struggling explaining it, but I've read many, many articles about it. Basically, what has happened here recently is you've heard news that Zion has had to testify. There's two suits going on right now, actually three suits, but the main two suits that you need to follow is the one in North Carolina and the one in Florida. The one in Florida was filed by Gina Ford for Zion backing out of his agreements with her sports agency. And so the reason why Zion is basically claiming that he can't be represented by Gina Ford is because under North Carolina law, that you have to you have to be an agent, a certified agent, to represent any of North Carolina's athletes. And so since Zion went to Duke, he's considered and protected under North Carolina's law. What Gina Ford is now alleging is that Zion never was a North Carolina athlete or eligible to be a North Carolina athlete. That's where
the relevancy comes in with whether Zion was receiving improper benefits. Because if he was, that would make him ineligible, thus proving her case.
Right. So it's very at the beginning of when all this was going down, it looked like that she was just coming at Zion, trying to discredit Zion. And if that was the case, they would have thrown that out. But a Florida court recognized her claim that it was material. It was relevant to the case. This wasn't just to discredit Zion, even though it was pretty inflammatory. Some of the stuff that's been thrown around. I mean, a $950,000 house for his parents when they originally were living in a house that was probably about 110 to 120. Don't quote me on that, but you can see the difference in between the houses. How do you go from 110 to 120 to a $950,000 house?
Almost $1 million house, right?
Exactly. So, and trust me, I've seen the pictures. It's really nice.
Okay, hold on. I want to touch on that. What is the source on that house picture? Because if it's from that Taco Tom tweet, I might have to discredit this whole conversation, man.
I saw it in an article. From it was either ESPN or CBS.
Okay.
Or to be honest, it might have been Bleacher Report, but I took it to be fact. So I should have done a little bit more research in verifying whether or not that picture was real. But that's what she alleged. Actually, I'm sorry. That's what Gina Ford put in the court transcripts. So that house, the picture of that house came from her transcripts, now that I remember correctly. So basically, if Zion was never eligible at Duke because he was NCAA ineligible, he cannot be protected under North Carolina law that says that you have to be represented by a certified agent, which Gina Ford isn't. So it gets very complex. So right now, an appeals court, a federal appeals court, has ruled in favor of Zion and said he doesn't need to testify. Whether it'll go further, that remains to be seen. Usually when it comes to a federal appeals court, that's usually the end-all be-all. But I'm sure that Gina Ford and her agency can file another appeal or another motion. So, I mean, she's being sued for a certain percentage of the $10 million that she was going to make. So, by the guy in Louisiana. So she's liable for that money. Guy in Louisiana doesn't care where it comes from, but he's owed that money. It's an amazing thing. It's an amazing insight into college basketball, what's happened in the last 3 or 4 years with Adidas, with Nike, with Christian Dawkins, something that we have always assumed has been going on has really been brought to the surface. So, personally for Duke, I don't really know what would happen. I mean, they would take away an ACC championship. It would tarnish Coach K's career. They would take away wins. They would probably give him a scholarship reduction. But they're not taking any championship banners away. So
I'll say Zion, they didn't win a championship when Zion was there. So I mean,
exactly. I mean, they would take away the ACC championship and his National Player of the Year. I mean, Duke's got plenty of that, floating around.
Right.
So,
I mean, besides, this whole Zion season for Duke fans, it was a memorable one based on just the plays he made more than the games they won. Sure. Zion was top 10 on SportsCenter almost just habitually. Zion does anything at all, it was maybe number 1, number 2 on SportsCenter top 10. I mean, the guy was just a playmaking machine, just a sight to watch, and still is. But the reason I bring up the Taco Tom tweet is because those allegations that Zion's parents received a house that was out of quote-unquote their price range came from a tweet from this Kentucky account called Taco Tom, where he posted a picture of a house and then put the caption, "This is Zion's house in Durham, North Carolina," or Zion's parents' house in Durham, North Carolina. The problem with that is there's no other context to it. It's just a tweet with the picture of the house. And like I said on a previous podcast, that could have been my house for all you all know. That could be Taco Tom's house. I mean, so it wasn't a very credible source if that is your evidence against Zion. So that's why I bring that up. And I know a lot of Kentucky fans that around this area use that tweet as proof, and it's like that's not a good source, But
well, I mean, that's the day and age that we live in, and there's so much garbage out there that you got to sift through on social media to figure out what's true and what's not.
Well, man, it's a process. It is a process.
I know it really is. I mean, I remember growing up, reading the newspaper, watching the nightly news. You just took what they were saying as fact. You didn't really have the internet that you have today. You didn't really have people spreading lies or taking things out of context or lying by omission. I think that's the biggest thing that I see these days is lies by omission. They only give you part of what was actually saying. They don't give you context. They just take a tweet out of context or a saying out of context. But I can confirm that the report that I read said that came from court documents. And
I would believe that more than that.
Right. Not many people are actually going to take the time to get online and go through court documents. Court documents, they're long and lengthy, and they have a ton of stuff that isn't really relevant. So you could have 100 pages, and there probably only be 2 pages out of those 100 pages that is relevant to what exactly. So.
And, it'd be nice if we had someone on this show that has a degree in journalism or something. Oh wait, we do. Hold on. Pause. But anytime somebody talks about media, I do have to clarify some misconceptions. And it's not that you're wrong, like how you feel that way. It's to several of your points. Some of this misinformation that is being spread, I mean, there's so many different media sites nowadays. It's not like your big ones anymore. For a while, CNN was the only cable news network. Now you got Fox, MSNBC, all them. Now, with so many different media sites competing against each other, now you have to tell a different side of the story that's going to make you relevant to a different target audience and get your viewers up. Your viewership and then your sponsors that come with that viewership is how they make their money. And as far as – and especially going back to another point you made about the internet age now, the internet has been great to access information, but it's also made everything so fast and easy that we've almost, as a society, become susceptible to wanting that fast, easy information. So when you have a site that just doesn't give a lot of context or whatever, it just short, sweet to the point. This is what we're looking at. It's easy for the common audience to fall into that. So I do understand that side of it.
The one thing that I wish with media, and I'm not saying that all media outlets lie by omission, but that's one of the things that I see is stuff taken out of context, lies by omission. But one of the biggest things that I wish that media would do, and I would actually gain a lot more respect for them, is if you got a story wrong, write a retraction story.
I agree. No, I've always been big on that too. It's like I feel like you gain so much more credibility when you admit to your mistakes, because if you don't, now people are like, "Well, I can't trust you." But
just give people the information. That's all I would like is just give people all the information, and everybody's going to have their opinion. Everybody's going to have their right to say whatever they want, but just give people the information and let people decide for themselves.
Exactly. And the problem with that is that we all did that for a while.
Sure.
But to a certain extent, you have to stand out and you have to sell it. My comprehension is to not spin a story and take it out of context. Just give an alternative opinion with the right information. because even though facts are facts and this and that and whatever, that doesn't mean that someone's perception may not be different to the facts that we're given. So my solution is to give an alternative perception to the facts that we know are true.
Right.
And I was very fortunate when I worked for the Sentinel News in Shelbyville. I really didn't have to spin stories because our paper was a local newspaper. You can't get Shelbyville news anywhere else except for that paper. So I wasn't competing with anybody. When I'd get to, bigger events like the King of the Bluegrass and or the state tournaments, yes, you could say like I had other reporters like Jason Frakes and all them there. But at the end of the day, I'm still telling it from what the Shelby County community wants to hear. And that's primarily how their teams did. So right. I was fortunate in that aspect, but other journalists are not as fortunate as I was in that same aspect. They have to compete with these other guys and girls. I'm not discriminating anybody because I know plenty of fine men and women who are in the journalism field, and I will vouch for them, the ones that I know that I do respect. Like, for example, I respect the hell out of Sam Drought. I mean, dude, I was talking to him. He contacted me not too long ago. He was trying to gather up. He's writing side pieces for Cat's Paws now, which I'll go into what all he's into right now. But he was talking to me about – he was asking me about some insight on Shelby County's football team, what they're going to look like this year. And I gave him the information that, I had from my time being around the Shelby County football team. But yes, someone like Sam Drought, I mean, he doesn't just work for the Old Emera. He also writes for Sports Illustrated Maven, the Louisville edition. So he writes University of Louisville-based articles for them. And he does side pieces for Cat's Paw. So he's involved with like 3 different publications. And he's won several awards for his dedication for that. So, I mean, I think the last time we had KPA awards, he took home 7 of these things. And I'm like, Jesus, Sam, I'm just trying when I was a writer, I'm just trying to get like you, buddy. And I wrote some great
Sam does a great job. I've seen him in action in our games over in North Oldham and, on the road when he follows us around the region. And he does a great job. He asks good questions. And it just seems like he's on top of his game a lot.
Oh yeah, he definitely is. And there's a lot of, and I was fortunate to meet a lot of people like that. John Herndon of the Anderson Local. One of the last stories I did when I was working at the Sentinel News is I kind of sat down and talked with him about some of the best players that he saw come out of the 8th region over the years. And he just gave, he just super awesome guy, gave me everything I could ever wanted and more. And just, I'd like to believe I made a friend out of the deal. So, I mean, but it's a lot of people. It's a lot of good journalists like that. So I don't want our audience to take away that me and you are just here bashing media. No, like we have our frustrations, but at the same time, we both understand this is the hand that they are dealt, and they have to make the most out of it.
Right, and that's when I was growing up, or the last 10 years, you kind of realize, like you said before, how these companies make their money. They make their money off clicks. They make their money off newspapers. They make their money off TV viewership. And it's future. So the ratings right now generate future dollars, future revenue. And so it's important to sensationalize. And I can see why they do it, why the media sensationalize. When I was growing up, you never heard – when you saw breaking news come across the bottom of the ticker or, across the screen, you expected it to be something big.
Right.
Now it's, somebody's resigning and moving on. And it's just like, okay, well,
to be fair, depending on who it is, that might be big news. Like, you mean to tell me if Coach K resigns tomorrow, that's not going to be breaking news?
That would be breaking news, but everything's breaking news. And so it's just like it tamps down on what really is breaking news, what really is. And I'm sure a lot of viewers would probably think the same way. It's just like, man, it's always breaking news. It's always something. I mean, I'll be honest. My iPad and iPhone, they go off just like it just did now. I got a notification notification from the Wall Street Journal. My wife gets on me all the time because it goes off every single night. I'm tapped into so many news articles, so many notifications, and I'm sure a lot of people like that are out there. I mean, when you get an Apple iPhone, you can set up your news and you can click on what you want to, what topics you want to hear from, and you get it from the HuffPost, you get it from Uproxx, you get it from Vox, you get it from Fox News, CNN, MSNBC, NBC, you know, the whole 9 yards, CNN. So, I mean, I get, and personally, I like to be that way because I want to see all angles.
Right. That's how I think I would challenge people to have that mentality, is to look at the whole story, not just the side you specifically want to look at that fits your narrative. But I do have a couple cute stories based on what we're just talking about, and just all these notifications that we get, you know, in the day and age we live in. I remember I was with my friend DJ the other day, who you've met, and he was looking at and he just happened to glance over my phone, and you see at the top of the screen, you have like the Score app, you have the ESPN app, you have like all the other media notifications that I get, and he just looks at me and goes, "Damn, bro, you think you have enough notifications going on? You gonna read some of them?" Like, I am, just not right this second. Chill out. That's a lot of stuff I got to read right now. And then the other one is back to like everything's breaking news. Cute story. At least from my perspective, or I think it is. But I remember when the Red Sox signed that phenom from that Japanese pitcher phenom, Daisuke Matsuzaka, and you know, he brought in the gyro ball, and he was supposed to be the next big thing. Problem is his arm gave out, and you know, when he was throwing that gyro ball, he was damn near unhittable, but he just threw his arm out, and he couldn't get the same velocity and spin on it, and people were just able to knock it out of the park. But that's not where I'm going with this. But I remember when he first landed in Boston, there was like a breaking story that he was walking into the park, you know, eating a ham sandwich and all this stuff, and it's like, okay, really? He's a human being. Is he not allowed to eat a sandwich? Like, let the man live. And that same week, like, Tom Brady was having a baby with Bridget Moynihan or something like that. And it's like, okay, most guys are going to be like, oh, props for Tom. I mean, Bridget Moynihan's a very attractive lady, so all power to him. But, I mean, it's stuff like that. Like, cool. I mean, he's having a baby. Good for him, you know, or he's eating a sandwich. He's hungry. Let the man eat. God.
But you go into, I don't know whether or not you've taken the time to go into how these YouTubers generate income. I mean, you get a couple $1,000s for 1 million views.
Oh yeah, I know.
And by the way, I mean, if we ever blow up, I would like to see a little bit of that money.
You act like that's going to be an option. I'm going to take care of you and Clucas. Come on now. Like, this may be the Less is More sports podcast, but there is no Less is More sports without Clucas and Spencer. Come on now.
There we go.
Yeah, I'm an asshole, but I am not that kind of asshole.
I will mark this day down, 6:40 on June 13th.
Mark it down, write it down, take a picture. What's this classic line from Friday? I don't give up. You know, I'm not going to say that word, but you know. But
right.
Anyway, but yeah, I mean, I mean, most of those YouTubers, the most of their money that they do generate from is not necessarily from YouTube itself. It's when they allow the big advertising companies that want to attach their ads to their videos. That's where they bring in most of their money. Like the big gamer YouTuber PewDiePie. I mean, he's sponsored by like Coca-Cola and all them, and so that's where he brings in most of his like millions of dollars from his YouTube experience. So yeah, if you're not getting any ads, you're not making any money. So
I didn't really even mean to do this, but it just made me think of something, especially with the climate that we're dealing with the NCAA and NCAA football and EA Sports and, you know, players' rights and can you make money off your own name?
That's a great, I think that's a great topic we should get into.
If you remember a couple of years ago, or it might have been 5 or 6 years ago, the NCAA kicker, I'm trying to pull his name up right now, but basically the story goes is the NCAA said that you're going to have to give up your YouTube page because you can't make money if you're going to be an NCAA athlete. And it was just like, you're not even – what he was doing on his YouTube page didn't even pertain to him being it was him kicking footballs. I mean –
I know who you're talking about now. I know
And
exactly what
so
you're talking about.
it was basically he was a trick shot kicker, and he was making money because YouTube was giving him money, and it was just like, so you're really going to make this kid choose between him kicking in NCAA football for his college and the money that he's making off of YouTube. So, right, like, I mean, he wasn't making bank, but I mean, a couple extra $1,000 here or there can't hurt you if you're a college athlete, especially a kicker at a small time college football team, which he was. So,
Right. And I always use this analogy to explain this rule to people is that your average college student, if they build a brand name for themselves, they're allowed to be compensated for that. You know, I know you were a college athlete, I wasn't, but you were at Spalding, not in Division I. So, and correct me if I'm wrong, if me or you had made a brand name for ourselves while we were in college, we would have been allowed to receive compensation for that. Now, yeah, correct me if I'm wrong for you.
I wouldn't have been able to.
Okay.
Because, yeah, I wouldn't have been able to.
But I mean, and that's what I try to get people to understand is like these athletes are marketed in such a way, and if the portion of money that they receive through stipends and all that is minimal compared to what the NCAA and these other companies are making off of using this player's image. I mean, perfect example, given what we're talking about, you mean to tell me that a player doesn't have big time name value when they blow through their shoe and cost Nike $1 billion overnight? Like, come on.
I mean,
now.
Nike was there the next morning. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
the market value for Zion was astronomical when it came to Nike or Adidas or whoever he chose, Puma. But these, and it's not really the NCAA, it's the president of the school, and the departments of the school. So, I mean, you can't tell me that, let's just take Michael Jordan, for example. You can't tell me that down at the gift shop in Chapel Hill that the number 23 with no name on the back, we don't know who that is. Everybody knows who that is.
Exactly.
And it's because, and we're not going to buy number 23 with North Carolina across the front if the player wasn't good enough. So
it goes back to that story about Chris Webber when he was walking around the mall in Ann Arbor when he saw his jersey being sold for $50, and he looks over at I believe it was an assistant coach in Michigan State, and he says, they can sell my jersey for $50, but here I'm asking you for gas money just to go to the freaking mall.
And that would have been an NCAA violation.
Do what?
And that would have been an NCAA violation.
Right.
I'm asking for gas money. It's crazy. And personally, if the NCAA doesn't want to budge, I know Florida just signed another law that basically says they're going to start paying their NCAA athletes, or allowing them to use their own name.
Exactly.
But if you don't want to allow these guys to do it, the NBA, the NCAA, the NFL, the NCAA football, they need to come up with a solution that basically says, okay, you go on. We'll do without you. Okay? These guys are professional enough to go play in the professional leagues. There are plenty of other guys who are not good enough to play in the NFL and the NBA that will give the entertainment value that these – I'm not going to stop watching North Carolina basketball. You're not going to stop watching Duke basketball, regardless of who puts on that jersey. Right. So, I mean, and not only that, they're good enough basketball players out there that can give me exactly what I want to see without having – I don't know about you, but personally, I like watching college basketball better than the NBA. So, I mean, I like the NBA, but, don't get me wrong, but I like college basketball better. So,
I know a lot of people like that. I mean, for me, I can't really say I like one better than the other. it's just a different game, and I appreciate the differences in both. So I'm just a basketball fan, man. I just love sports. I mean,
Sure.
you have a bunch of guys that are good out there playing, or like you said, they don't even have to be like a Zion level talent. I mean, if they're guys that can just get the job done and execute, it's like poetry in motion for me to watch. So I mean, like I said, I covered high school sports. I mean, yeah, I covered guys like Davion McKnight, Marcellus Vale, Olivia Federle, Caleb Collins, AJ Bradford, guys, across Shelby County and Collins that were very good, but not every team had those type of talents. But I still had to go cover, and I still had some great times. I mean,
Right.
sport at the end of the day, sports are sports. And like Chris Mack recently said, for every Zion Williamson or Anthony Davis, there's a guy like an Obi Toppin or a Luka Garza that comes to college and takes time and needs time to develop, but gets to where he needs to be in time for when he is ready to go take that next leap. So
I mean, you can even look at John Morant. So
right. I mean, John Morant was not a very highly ranked recruit, but he worked on his craft and he became a number 2 overall pick by the end of his sophomore year. I mean,
totally forgot what I was going to say. Oh, yes. Jay Billis and Duke talking about this issue with NCAA amateurism. Did you catch up on that this week?
I have not.
Basically, Billis kind of ripped Duke's position about NCAA naming rights, amateurism, the whole 9 yards. Basically, the topic that's heavy in NCAA debates right now, as far as amateurism and whether or not guys should be paid. Apparently, Duke's athletic director made you could say it was controversial statements.
I'll say I got the notification. I haven't opened it yet.
Yeah, I think it was just recent. I think I read the article before, but yeah, it's something we can touch on later. Sports is still kind of on pause.
I'm reading the headline right now. Duke athletic director Kevin White is concerned that name and likeness legislation will change the NCAA landscape, and that is pretty controversial. I mean, just based off the headline, I'm not going to go into too much details until I read this article, but I mean,
it kind of goes back to what I was saying. I mean, again, it doesn't really matter who's putting on that jersey. People are still going to attend games. People are still going to enjoy the tradition and the experience of, Durham and Chapel Hill and, the walk at Clemson, Death Valley. I mean, you name it throughout the college landscape. People want to be there on Saturdays for college football games. They want to experience the tradition, socializing with their neighbors, people in their community. And then they want to go watch football and have a good time. And that's what Americans like to do. And so, and the same thing with basketball. Trust me, in Vegas, they're still going to bet the same in March Madness if there wasn't a Zion Williamson out there.
Oh, yeah.
So,
I mean, programs like Duke that have that, or Kentucky that have that brand name. I mean, the last time I can't speak for Kentucky, but it's been since the 1980s the last time Duke hasn't sold out a home crowd. So
right.
I mean, they bring their fans. They bring the fans. I mean, and not every team from that time frame was a national title contender. So I mean, there's so much of school pride. There's just so much to the brand name of a Duke or of a Kentucky that just attracts people, whether they're good or not.
And maybe the college basketball landscape, maybe the college landscape will change in 100 years, but it's not changing anytime soon.
Man, I just wish that sometime it changes by the time you or me kick the bucket. That's all I got to say.
Yeah, I do wish that we can just I mean, they're 18 years old. They're adults. Give them what they're due.
Exactly.
And not a scholarship. I mean, I tell you, some of the scholarships for some of the guys who sit at the end of the bench at Duke University, that's worth their market value. But a Zion Williamson scholarship to Duke University, it does not match his market value.
No.
And he definitely needs to be compensated for what ESPN was making on him last year and for what Duke was making on him in merchandise. So, and not only that, you could go down the road and look at Texas and Notre Dame. They have their own network. They're making money that network is making money somehow. And they're making money because of what college athletes are doing and the revenue and, that they're generating. So do they get a share? So it's a fair question. Whether or not there's an easy solution, that remains to be seen. It's obviously not easy, but yeah.
So transitioning a little bit, talking about moving on to a player that would also fit that market value, and that is 2021 number 1 ranked recruit Jonathan Kuminga has decided to reclassify to the 2020 class. I ran a Twitter poll earlier this week, and 44% of the voters, which being the most, voted that Kuminga is going to be suiting up for Texas Tech next season, followed by 34% that chose to go to the G League route. So based on what you know about Kuminga, where do you think he goes?
Seems like Texas Tech is bringing in some players, aren't they?
Yeah, Mac McClung, now Jonathan Kuminga. I mean, Chris Beard is just making some noise in Lubbock right now.
To be honest, it's anybody's guess. I mean, who was recruiting this guy before? Before.
I mean, obviously the Dukes, the Kentuckys. I mean, I can pull up Kuminga's. But the thing is, with Kuminga reclassifying to the 2020 class, Kuminga's a 6'8" wing, very athletic, defends well, very skilled ball handler, can drive. He kind of reminds me of a 6'8" version of Jaylen Brown, and if that helps any cause. And the thing is, with Duke and Kentucky's recruiting classes, they're both loaded at the wing position. So for Kuminga, I don't think Duke and Kentucky are going to be an option for him just because he's going to be fighting with other wings for his amount of looks. Someone like that, if he goes the college route, he's going to go somewhere where he's going to be able to have more of a standout. Now, not to say that Texas Tech doesn't have another good wing coming in. That's Nemani Burnett, who played on the prolific team, same team as Jalen Green. He, not to say they don't have a good wing, but I mean, with Duke, he's going to be competing with guys like Jalen Johnson, DJ Stewart, Wendell Moore for that wing position playing time. And for Kentucky, you're going to be competing with guys like Terrence Clark and BJ Boston and guys like that. So, I mean, I think he would, if he does go the college route, I think he goes somewhere where that's not so loaded at that wing position. But personally, I'm one to say, given Kuminga's rating, he might be another G Leaguer.
Yeah, I mean, look at a 24/7's profile of him. Professional is listed on there. So it's just amazing to me to looking at his college list and the teams that he names is Auburn and Texas Tech. They kind of you don't really consider them, in the last 5 years to be, on the top. Now they've entered with their recent success, going to the Final Four, playing in a national championship game like Texas Tech, you can start to get on these guys' list. So Auburn and Texas Tech. I always thought with Kentucky, Duke, North Carolina, Kansas, of course, you can try to kind of throw Kansas out of there for right now, but you look at those schools and they already have so much. Where are they going to fit? Exactly. And that's why I talk to a lot of Kentucky fans, people at work and stuff like that. They're like, man, look at how loaded we are. And I kind of have to remind some of them that you can only put 5 guys on the floor. And and then you got to be able to play together as a team. It doesn't matter that you got, 9 McDonald's All-Americans, only 5 can play. So, you might have more depth and, that might help you for longer runs and, tough games in February and March. But Yeah, it's amazing to see Auburn and Texas Tech listed on his schools as some of the schools he's considering.
Of course, I have to wonder if Bruce Pearl is, having some more barbecues down in Auburn.
Well, I could give a call to somebody.
I was about to ask, because you have a player that is committed. You just coached a player this year that is committed to Auburn. So let's talk.
Yeah,
a little bit.
He just got on campus here the last couple of days. Basically, just announced on Twitter that it's his new hometown, Auburn. So
my next question is: given the interviews I've seen from Justin Powell, and I'm sure you can vouch for this too. He admits he's a mama's boy. Is he going to get homesick playing in Auburn?
He has a little bit of that, but his charisma, I just think he's going to fit in nicely down there. He's going to get along with everybody. And he's the type of guy that you want to have as a guard because I think the thing that was most impressive about Justin this year is we had a guy on my basketball team. I coached the freshman team this past season at North Oldham that – he was the guy at the end of the bench, but Justin found a way to get across to a freshman who sat at the end of the bench. And that's just the type of person that Justin was. And that's kind of what I said on, our virtual banquet that we had a couple months ago, that, Justin has the ability to bring everybody together. And that's kind of what you want to see out of your point guard. So I think he's going to do just fine. He had a great season, even though he was 80%. So a lot of people don't know that is that he was playing the entire time that he played, from the beginning of December to the end of December. He was playing at 80%.
It's funny you bring up just how his type of charisma and bringing people together, and now how that translates on the court is he plays a lot like that. I mean, when I covered the King of the Bluegrass, covering Collins and the King of the Bluegrass, I stuck around for a lot of the games, saw you all play several times, saw your all's matchup against Mail. And one thing that stood out to me about Justin is his court vision. It's second to none. I mean, he was just making no-look passes, just like it was second nature. And everybody was getting involved. People were getting open looks from three. And then you have guys like Dallas and, your other shooter, Luke, getting open looks. And then when they would cheat up to guard the perimeter, he would find, Tyler Higdon down low. Mm-hmm. And then if you stepped out on all of them, I mean, he could just take it to the basket or do whatever he wanted. So, I mean,
the thing that was really impressive about Justin is that he would always be bothering us coaches about film. And it wasn't film that he was involved in. It was film from past seasons for Oldham County. Can I get the huddle password? Can I watch this film? I want to know who I'm playing against. I want to see the holes in the offense. And then he wanted us to record practice. We record practice so he can watch what he's not seeing in practice during certain sets that we ran. And so to say he watched a lot of film is an understatement. He watched a ton of film. There were times that there were just stories that I heard and times that he would text me or, call David, and he was just wanting more film. His dad would come and tell us stories about how, usually on a Friday night you would be out hanging out with your friends, doing what a high schooler does, and he's upstairs watching film. So
that's what you like. That's what you like to hear. That's, as a coach, I'm sure that's just music to your ears. I mean,
it is, because he probably watched more film than any of us combined. I hate to admit that, but it's the truth. No,
I think that speaks more on him than it does you all. I mean,
and then he would, he'd get 1,000 shots up a day. So it's just, knocking down the gym door at 6 o'clock in the morning. And for him to be hampered by injury and to still play at a high level the way he did at the King of the Bluegrass, he's going to be really great at Auburn once he gets his feet underneath him. And if he doesn't if he doesn't have any more injuries or, he doesn't get passed up. So I think he can offer Auburn a lot. He can there's only one player I've ever seen throw a frozen rope pass full court like Justin could, and that was Stephon LaFours. And Stephon LaFours did not play basketball in college. No. He was a quarterback at U of L. So that's the type of vision that he had. I think the most impressive thing that I saw out of Justin this year was on a highlight tape from the King of the Bluegrass. He came off a screen, and he had every opportunity to stop and pop from about 15 feet, but he decided to make a no-look pass to the short corner for an easy layup and an and one. And that's what he can offer you. He can fill it up, but he can also get you 12 assists. So it's going to be exciting to see what he can offer.
Best of luck to Justin, and best of luck to all the athletes that are looking to make that next step. I know Davion and Marcellus in Shelby County, in the Shelby County area, along with for Collins and along with the other Shelby County athletes that I covered, are also going to be making that next step. And transitioning to others making that next step is another big event that happened this week was the MLB draft. I'm going to be honest, given normal circumstances, I don't watch the MLB draft. Most don't, because it's usually around 50 rounds with like over 30 picks around, and it's like, geez, this just takes forever. It's like watching paint dry almost. It doesn't usually bring the excitement that the NBA or the NFL draft has. But given the circumstances, I thought I'd give it a shot. And, of course, the number one overall pick, Spencer Torkelson, he's a third baseman out of Arizona State. Kid's has some serious pop at that third baseman position. I mean, definitely just checks all the boxes if you're looking for your just prototypical all-star third baseman. Obviously, baseball is a weird sport. We don't know what's going to happen, but as far as just how he looks, I mean, the talent's there. And, of course, we got to give a shout-out to U of L. Of course, Reed Detmers, left-handed pitcher, went number 10 to the Angels. So maybe hopefully he can give this is the Angels that pitching staff that they need. They have the hitting. They got the best player in baseball. But, pitching's been an area of need and maybe hopefully Reed can give it to him, along with the several other players that U of L that got drafted. And, of course, I got to talk about my Dookie, Bryce Jarvis. Let me tell you, before COVID, Bryce was on a tangent in Durham this year. I mean, he opens the season with a perfect game against Cornell. In 4 games, had a 3-1 record. His ERA was 0.64 and had 40 strikeouts. So he's averaging 10 strikeouts a game. I mean, and he goes number 18 to the Diamondbacks. I remember one of my friends actually texted me the next day, who's a Red Sox fan, and said, man, I really wanted Bryce. The Red Sox were picking at 19 right behind the Diamondbacks, and the Diamondbacks just swooped him up. And, of course, I'm a Cardinals fan. We were picking at 21. So I'm hoping Bryce falls to the Cardinals, but we fell about 3 slots too short. But we ended up getting a nice player in Jordan Walker. But I know you didn't watch a lot of it, so I'll just
I'd like to give a shout-out to a kid that played at North Oldham, where I coached basketball at. His name is Joe Boyle. He came out of Notre Dame. He went I forgot what round, I think he went 143rd. He's a right-handed pitcher, 6'7", right-handed pitcher. It's really tall. I can speak from experience because I was a 6'8" right-handed pitcher. It's a lot of leverage off the mound. And not only that, the trajectory downwards, regardless of whether or not you're a 3/4 or overhand pitcher, the trajectory downwards from a taller pitcher is much tougher for a batter to hit. So best of luck to him. Of course, probably the best two teams that came away in this draft were the Rays and the Mariners. They probably had the best draft. So
I might have to disagree with that.
Sure.
I think the Blue Jays made some noise, and the Blue Jays, they actually drafted probably I think the most, if there is such a thing as a flawless prospect, they drafted the closest thing to him with the number 5th overall pick. He was actually in a lot of mock drafts expected to go in the top 2. We don't really know why he slipped, if there is even any reason behind it. But his name's Austin Martin. He's out of Vanderbilt, who in the last 10 years has produced a lot of MLB talent. I mean, they're also coming off that national championship over a season ago. And of course, I know all the Louisville fans remember that Luke Smith game. Hell, I even wrote an article about it. It's called Fair or Foul. It's on the Sentinel News website if you want to check it out. It talks about trash talking. I talk about the whole Luke Smith situation.
Yeah.
Definitely a good read if you want to check it out. But back to Austin Martin, the thing that I can't talk about this prospect without talking about how versatile he is. He's a natural shortstop, but during his time in Vanderbilt, played 7 different defensive positions. Obviously, the other 2 being that he didn't play as pitcher and catcher. But being a natural shortstop, he actually played 65 of his games at third base just because because he was so versatile. I mean, you could pretty much plug him anywhere. And not to mention as a hitter, he's not a guy who's going to hit for power, but he's that spark plug at the top of the lineup that can just get some momentum going so where you can get down to your where you get to your power hitters to start driving in runs. Not to mention once he gets on the base, he's a threat to steal, very quick prospect. But I mean, he was probably my favorite prospect in this draft. Another one that I also really liked is Emerson Hancock out of Georgia. You want to talk about just those pitchers that throw with power and those guys that are just so intimidating on the mound. I mean, you think of guys like a regular season Clayton Kershaw, guys that who was that one handler that worked with us at FedEx that year, real big Pirates fan. I can't think of his name, but he would always describe certain pitchers as guys that step up on the mound and make batters.
Matt Kurtz.
Not Matt Kurtz. No.
Oh.
No, this was a Tim.
Oh, yeah. A lot of years, man.
Right, I know. It was definitely not Matt Kurtz, I promise you. But he always talked about those pitchers that just give that imposing presence that just make batters want to shit their pants. And that's what Emerson Hancock is. I mean, he's big. He's 6'7". I mean, he throws with a lot of pop. And his velocity numbers, baseball is such an analytic sport nowadays, and they were comparing on ESPN like his velocity numbers, and they are similar at this point in his career as far as ball trajectory and everything else to that of Justin Verlander. I mean,
wow.
I know that's what I'm saying. Like, anytime you bring up that name, Justin Verlander, and compare that to a pitcher, that's a hell of a compliment. I mean, Verlander is probably a top 5 pitcher this decade. I mean, now has a World Series ring if they don't take it away. But
they won't.
No, I don't think so either. They don't do that so much for pro sports. But I guess my third and final player that really stood out to me in this draft is this high schooler named Zach Veen. Watching him play, he's like a carbon copy of Cody Bellinger, who just won the NL MVP. We're talking about just the way he fields in right field, but mostly just that swing. It's just so pretty, and it's almost like it's like we just made him to a lab. Like somebody just grabbed Cody Bellinger's DNA and just reshaped him into another prospect.
Wow.
And you want to talk about, and back to you're talking about players that are dedicated. Veen actually started playing, or at least practicing, with the high school from the time he was 12 years old in 6th grade, because what he would do is he would just ride his bike to practice, and he would just go up there to make every practice and watch the game. Eventually the coach is like, hey, you do want to practice with us. And so he's starting to practice at the high school level at such a young age that he just picked it up quick, that once he was eligible to go to high school, he stood out. But those are my big takeaways from the MLB draft. But if you have anything else to add, I mean, I know you're a Reds fan.
The Reds, 19th, according to the MLB draft rankings. I could say the NL Central as a whole did not do well.
I'll say outside of Jordan Walker, I really wasn't that impressed with our draft. But
yeah, the Pirates were ranked 16th. I want to say I think the Pirates were ranked 14th. The Cardinals were ranked 16th, and the Reds were ranked 19th. Let's see. Got a left-handed pitcher named Nick Lodolo, and then a right-handed pitcher named Hunter Green. Ages 20 and 22, and then you had an outfielder who's 18, fresh out of high school. He'll probably spend some time in the minor league system, but his name is Austin Hendrick, to be drafted out of high school. It's a name to watch out for here soon. So, wish the Reds would turn it around. I actually hope that the season starts, because apparently it was supposed to be a little bit of a promising year for Cincinnati, but I don't know. When is the Major League Baseball going to get it together? It's a pretty socially distant sport to begin with.
Mm-hmm. I mean, and of course, as much as we want to see baseball get it together so that the fans want to see them back on the field, as a Cardinals fan, I want to know, is this Nolan Arenado deal going to happen? I mean, are we going to team up Paul Goldschmidt and Nolan Arenado? I mean, we lose a bat in the lineup like Marcelo Zuna, and it just that move, just not only is Nolan a great player, just that publicity to bring him in. I mean, it's like you've described many moves in the past. It's a sexy move, and the more I watch Nolan, I think as a fair rating, if we're rating position players, I think Nolan's a top 3 player. You got the obviously you have Mike Trout at number 1. I think you can flip that 2 or 3 with Yelich or Arenado. I want to see if that's going to happen, if there's going to be any truth to that, because I think the Cardinals they have the pitching staff. They just got to add more to that offense. That's what got them in trouble against Washington in the NLCS. So I'm looking out for that. Of course, repping the St. Louis shirt right now. So got to.
Yeah. It's almost the All-Star break. So we should be over halfway through the season. And personally, I thought the last deal that they put on the table was a pretty good deal, considering everything that's going on. I mean, I don't like to talk about anybody and their money. That's between you and, your owner. But a lot of people are making sacrifices in this country, and, they would like to see some things on TV. So,
right.
Except for the same thing every day. So,
right.
I personally, I thought it was a pretty good deal. I thought it was like 75% salary for the entire year, and you play less than half the season. So, let's get it done, guys.
let's get baseball back.
Yes.
Hey, we're about nearing the end of the podcast, but we got a couple more topics to talk about. Being that we are a recruiting podcast more than anything, we got to shout out the local team. They just landed a 4-star prospect in the class of 2021, and Bobby Pettiford, more of an athletic combo guard than really. He's a 4-star rated prospect. Point guard prospect, but I think he plays more like a combo than a true point. My buddy Christian and I were talking about this earlier in the week, and he says he reminds him a lot of Terry Rozier, and I think that's a really fair comparison. So, if Louisville gets another Rozier on campus, I think that's going to make that backcourt even stronger with, David Johnson on the team. If he doesn't leave after this year, barring what he does this season or who, and any of those other guards that Chris Mack's going to have. So, Louisville's trending in the right direction. I think Chris Mack's a great coach. I think Bobby.
Yeah, you got JJ Traynor down there from Bardstown coming in. Coached by Boo Brewer. You got Jay Scrub. Then you got this Pettiford kid. I mean, a lot of 4-star guys.
Is Scrub actually going to Louisville?
Well, I mean, 24/7 said he signed. I've always heard mixed things about him.
Yeah, that's what I was kind of wondering.
Yeah, you got DeAndre Davis from Indianapolis. Right now, their recruiting rank is 30th in the country, 6th in the ACC. This it's pretty down from the last couple of years, from 6 and 12. But the thing that I know about 4-star athletes is that they're 4-star, they're 4-year players.
Mm-hmm.
So you get these guys that play together for 4 years. You never know what could happen. And then you add a piece like a Jamal Mashburn, for Kentucky. And you might be able to make a Final Four run, national championship run. So I think, we never know what would have happened with Louisville, like I said before, but, Chris Mack, he's a good coach. So I know there's a lot of people out there who criticize him. I mean, when you're Xavier, there's not much more that you can do than get a number 1 seed in tournaments. So I think that's an accomplishment in and of itself. So I've been to a couple of his coaching seminars, and he's very confident in what he coaches, what he believes. And I can tell you, when you're a confident coach and you believe in what you're talking to your players believe in you. They believe in what they're doing. So that speaks volumes. And so now it's just getting the right players, getting them to play together. So yeah.
And if any success to high school leads to his time in U of L, Bobby Pettiford last season did lead his team to a 29-1 record in a state championship. So the winning background is there. But I guess we're going to transition towards the end of the podcast. And the last thing we want to talk about is that for those sports lovers, there is an event to watch next week, and that is the Belmont Stakes. I myself am not a big horse racing fan, despite being a Louisville native. I watch the Derby. That's about it. But I know Spencer was wanting to talk about that. So, Spencer, all you, bud.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of odd this year. Instead of having 3 races in between 5 weeks, we get 3 races over the course of 2.5 months, or actually 3 months, because the Preakness will be running the 1st of October. The Derby is going to be running over Labor Day weekend. And
on my birthday.
Yes. So you should enjoy a birthday weekend. And so, but it's kind of weird because, with the Kentucky Derby, everybody wants to get into the Kentucky Derby because of how prestigious it is. This year with the Belmont Stakes, you're going to have your typical 8 horses.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas the Kentucky Derby, which would be the first leg of the Triple Crown, would have on average 18 to 20 horses. So, like I was telling you before the podcast started, 1.5 miles for 3-year-olds is a long distance, and not many owners out there want to put their horses through that type of race. And not only that, if there is a Triple Crown winner this year, it kind of takes away from the mystique a little bit, because you run 3 races in 5 weeks. Now you're running 3 races over the course of 3 months. Takes away from the mystique. So, I mean, the odds-on favorite right now is Tiz the Law at 3-2, and then you have Dr. Post at 9-1, Tap It to win 12-1, Sol Volante at 14-1, Max Player at 18-1, Modernist at 20-1, Farmington Road at 22-1, and Basin at 25-1. I talked to a friend last night. Actually, he was on his way up to Elmont, New York, to where the Belmont Stakes is going to be ran. He shoes. When I say he shoes horses, he's a farrier by trade, is what they call him. He's shoeing a couple of Belmont Stake participants, horses. So I was asking him whether or not there would be any owners or fans in the stand up in New York. And of course, with all the laws that Governor Cuomo has up in New York and how hard New York City has been hit by COVID-19, there's going to be no fans. And I asked him whether or not the owners were going to be able to watch and whether or not there would be any undercard races. And he said he didn't have any details as far as that goes, but it just seems like that the owners will be allowed to sit in the boxes. But you can see how serious it is up there in New York State with COVID-19 and everything that's been going on the last couple of months. They moved the Belmont Stakes back 2 weeks to no avail. Still won't have fans. And instead of being the third leg, it becomes the first leg. So
just definitely a shake up there.
Yes, certainly be interesting. But the country's resilient. It's been through tougher times than this, and we'll bounce back. We always do.
I'm confident in that as well too. Well, this is about wraps up another episode of the Less is More Sports podcast. I'd like to thank Spencer again for joining me as well. He's co-host. He's almost that's his duty. So, but no, Obviously, I think we had a good talk today. As always, to the fans that watch this, if there's anything else you want us to elaborate a little more, leave it down in the comment section. But until next time, is your host Les Abbott.
I'm Matthew Spencer. Thanks for having us this week. So,
yes, sir.